Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that really proves reality is often way darker than anything we see on our screens. We are going to untangle this massive, twisted web of social media lies, double crosses, and the incredibly dark psychology behind a seriously calculated crime. We're looking at the case of the Bullet Girlfriend, an influencer whose shining digital life masks a pretty terrifying reality. Let's get right into it.
So it all really begins with this one chilling question. I mean, picture this. You're scrolling through an influencer's feed, right? You see luxury trips, these bold photo shoots, this whole vibe of total independence. But what if literally every single post was funded by extortion? Well, on April 28, 2026, the body of 27-year-old Rocky Kashyap, known to her followers as this glamorous influencer, was found stuffed in a sack in the jungles of Mirzapur. That is a staggering 800 kilometers away from her home. But here is the wildest part. When authorities contacted her family, they flat out refused to claim her body. To understand why, we have to look past those social media filters.
Okay, Section 1. Glamour versus Dark Reality. Unmasking Rocky Kashyap.
Just look at the crazy stark contrast we have here. Over on the left, you've got her curated persona, 11,000 followers, luxury travel to Thailand and Meghalaya, and that Bullet Girlfriend alias, where she's flaunting a licensed pistol while simultaneously playing the victim of men. But then, you look at the right side. The reality. Rocky actually came from a really modest village. She'd been completely estranged from her humble family for 7 years. Her brother literally sold chow mein for a living. And rather than being this helpless victim, she had 2 failed marriages and routinely used local political ties to basically just intimidate people.
Moving to Section 2. A web of blackmail. The trap is set.
So, Rocky's actual on-the-books income was from a low-paying government contract job. You might be wondering, how on earth did she afford the luxury trips? Well, honey traps. She actively targeted wealthy married men, pulling them in, and then using that licensed pistol and those political ties to just bleed them dry. And this brings us to a 37-year-old official named Vikrant Kumar. They get entangled in a 3-year affair, and when Vikrant bought a new property in Mathura, Rocky demanded he transfer it to her. When he said no, she actually set his car on fire, which essentially forced Vikrant to confess the entire affair to his wife.
Which brings us to Section 3, the first murder, April 15, 2026.
This is where things escalate drastically. Rocky teams up with a local political figure named Siddharth Chauhan, someone she already had ties with, and his friend Kapil. Together, they hatch this incredibly dark plan. On the evening of April 15th, Rocky reaches out to Vikrant. She lures him to a flat under the total lie that they're going to settle their disputes and, make things right once and for all.
But man, the reality of that meeting was just horrifying. The second Vikrant arrived, he was ambushed. He still refused to hand over the property, so Rocky used the exact same pistol from her Instagram reels to shoot him 3 times in the chest. And then, the sheer calculated brutality kicks in. To prevent anyone from identifying him, the trio violently crushed his face, emptied his pockets, and then drove 130 kilometers into the dead of night to dump his body in a canal in Saharanpur. It was absolutely ruthless, and what stands out is the complete lack of remorse from Rocky.
Let's look at Section 4. Betrayal among thieves. The mastermind becomes the victim.
On the path of crime, no one is loyal. I want you to keep that quote firmly in your mind right now, because it sets the stage for a massive, gruesome twist in this explainer.
So jump ahead to April 22nd. Vikrant's wife, Prachi, files a missing person report, and she explicitly names Rocky as a threat to her husband. The police obviously bring Rocky in for questioning. Now, Rocky was slick, right? She dodged their questions, and because they lacked hard evidence at that exact moment, the police had to let her walk. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Her accomplices, Siddharth and Kapil, started panicking. They quickly realized that if Rocky cracked under pressure, they were going down with her.
So they completely flipped the script. Kapil calls up Rocky and invites her to a farmhouse for a party. Supposedly to celebrate getting away with Vikrant's murder. And Rocky walks right into it. They pretend to drink with her, making sure she gets heavily intoxicated. Once she's completely defenseless, they slit her throat, stab her repeatedly, stuff her into a sack, and drive her body 800 kilometers away to the jungles of Mirzapur. The mastermind of the first murder meets an equally grim, ironic end at the hands of the very guys she hired.
All right, Section 5. How police cracked it? The digital footprint.
Let's walk through this timeline real quick, because it really highlights just how fast and chaotic this whole cover-up was. April 15, Vikrant is murdered.
Just 3 days later, his unidentified body turns up in Saharanpur. By April 22nd, the missing person report gets filed, which leads to Rocky's brief questioning, and less than a week later, April 28, Rocky's body is discovered 800 kilometers away. Two seemingly unrelated bodies, right? But data doesn't lie.
The police work here? Honestly, it was incredibly logical. Step 1, they tracked Vikrant's last mobile location, and it perfectly matched Rocky's on the night of the murder. Then, they traced Rocky's cell tower data, which showed her moving straight towards Saharanpur later that night. This prompted police to cross-reference unidentified bodies in that area, and tragically, Vikrant's wife identified his preserved clothing. Finally, they checked Rocky's call logs. The very last call before her phone died? It was from Kapil. That brilliant digital tracking led straight to their confessions and arrests by May 1st.
Let's move to Section 6, the psychology of crime, minds in the abyss.
So the crucial takeaway here is that Rocky wasn't just, driven by simple greed. Her behavior actually aligns perfectly with a recognized psychological framework known as the Dark Triad. It's a mix of 3 extremely negative personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Let's break these down and connect them directly to the facts of the case. First up, narcissism. Rocky had this intense, constant craving for attention and admiration, building this flashy, totally fabricated Instagram lifestyle, all while consistently playing the victim to get sympathy. Second is Machiavellianism. This is all about manipulation and just a cynical disregard for morality. We saw this in how she ruthlessly honey-trapped men and used political connections strictly for financial exploitation. And finally, psychopathy. This is characterized by a complete lack of empathy and remorse. I mean, she looked a man she had been with for 3 years in the eye, shot him, and helped mutilate his face without a single display of guilt.
But wait, what about Vikrant? Why on earth did an educated guy stay in a relationship where his car was literally being set on fire? Well, that's a textbook example of the sunk cost fallacy. He had invested 3 years, intense emotions, and a significant amount of money into this highly toxic dynamic. His reluctance to cut his losses, despite the glaringly obvious danger, is tragically what cost him his life.
And finally, 0. 0 is exactly the number of loyal friends you have when you enter the criminal underworld. The grand illusion Rocky built was that she was this powerful, untouchable woman surrounded by allies. But the cold reality? Her own family abandoned her memory, and her partners in crime executed her the absolute second she became a liability.
Which leaves us with this final, honestly pretty unsettling thought. Rocky's followers saw a fearless, glamorous traveler. They had absolutely no idea they were double-tapping the fabricated life of a manipulative, extortionist killer. So if a beautifully curated online life can effectively hide the absolute darkest of psychological traits, how well do we really know the people we follow? Think about that the next time you're scrolling through your feed. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.